Welcome to the JD Bunkis podcast. Leafs might have another goalie. There was a real shot that the injuries could derail this season. Leafs were in a funk. They weren't defending. Matthews left hurt. Nyes left hurt. Waugh left hurt. Tanev left hurt. They lost their starting goaltender. Their other starter was working his way back from an absence, and people wondered whether or not he was going to be able to find his game on the fly. Carlo got hurt. Lawton was injured. You looked at the lineup every night, and there was one point. There's a famous, Leafs Twitter famous post of what I think is the 2015 Toronto Maple Leafs. And it shows the line combinations. Whatever year it was where P.A. Parenteau was like leading the team in goals. And whenever the Leafs lineup looks bad on Twitter, people will grab that screenshot of that lineup and post it with whatever the Leafs lineup is that isn't looking so hot that very night. And you were looking at that. You were definitely feeling a level of, how are they going to be able to make it out of this thing? And weirdly, the injuries have allowed a lot of things to fall into place. Just a fact. Not as much with the forwards, I would say, other than maybe Easton Cowan got more of an opportunity to showcase yet again what he can do. But overall, that one was more, once they got healthy with the forwards, things started to look a lot better. But injuries on the blue line allowed you to find Troy Stecher. Injuries in net have now allowed you to uncover Dennis Hildeby, who was sitting there with a .926 save percentage, leads all goaltenders in goals saved above expected per 60, and looks like a guy. Looks like a real NHL goaltender. Broke him down a little bit on Leafs Talk last night, so I'm not going to get way too deep into it. All I'll say is this. Immediately, the response from Leafs fans when they see a few games of this kid playing well is, well, now the Leafs have 3 goalies, don't you have to trade one? And I understand the urge to think that way because the Leafs don't have a lot of players to pull from in the trade market. It's well documented that they don't have their draft picks. It's well documented that they don't have a ton of prospects. Yeah, maybe Ben Danford is a little bit higher in terms of the way he's viewed by the NHL world at large right now, but there's not a ton of depth there. If they want to improve this team, there are not a lot of avenues for them to do so. So naturally, your mind does go to the goaltenders. And that's fair. I'm not going to say it's an insane place to put your brain. But for me personally, yeah, there's no scenario where you're trading a goalie this year outside of a team absolutely blows you away and you get a pretty concrete sample size that Dennis Hildeby is the guy. There's a few reasons for this. One is just simply Anthony Stolarz last year for you was your better goaltender. He was the guy that you felt most confident in. Woll was very close, but Stolarz is extremely capable. And I know that this is a position where it feels like relief pitching in baseball. Hey, are you really sure that you're going to get the same results the following season? No. But I'm not in a year where, again, the goal is not to make the playoffs. The goal for this team is to win a Stanley Cup. I'm not removing one of what could be one of the most important pieces of this team to acquire what exactly? Like what does an Anthony Stolarz fetch you in the trade market? People love to do like Edmonton will give you everything. All right, what does Edmonton got? What are you actually getting from them? You've got 2 injury-prone players in that position that you can't really lean on. And the idea that you could be one of those guys away from having to lean on Dennis Hill to become playoff time is just not happening for me. The only scenario for me in which you trade one of those guys is it's during the offseason. You get a full year where Dennis Hildeby gets a lot of run in the net, or at least enough where you feel pretty confident that this is who he is. Not this, obviously. Again, I don't think he's going to lead the league in one of the most important statistical goaltending categories and have a .936, but you get where I'm going with it. So ultimately, I would just say if you've got three goaltenders, enjoy it. That's a great position to be in. And it's especially important for a team that has two guys that have, if anything, proven that they're not going to be able to stay in the net for long periods of time, and that there's a strong likelihood that you're going to lose one of them come playoff time. Um, it's the GM meetings. The Blue Jays been rumors for weeks now, and they've done a lot of great work, right? There's a little, I would say, hand-wringing now with Shane Bieber that the front office has spoken about him and described him as week to week during the offseason. Didn't really love that. But they grabbed Dylan Cease. They paid him a ton of money, but they got that thing done. And they have been at the forefront of Kyle Tucker discussions. He was just visiting the complex in Florida, which he lives close to, but still, you get the percolations. You get the feeling that this team really wants to make a splash, and everybody's saying that they do. But we are now entering a bit of a pressure zone for this team where you're getting rumors about Bo Bichette, and he's having Zoom calls with the Boston Red Sox. And Kyle Tucker is still going to be very much in demand. And while some are projecting that this market is going to move slowly, the Toronto Blue Jays, as confident as they are in the depth of this offense and their bats, they still got to get something done. Jim Bowden, former GM of 16 years and executive of the year, now insider and analyst. You can see him on SiriusXM and read him at The Athletic. He joins me now. What's up, Jim? How are we doing? Thanks for making time, man. I know it's super busy.
It's not busy. It's really quiet here at the winter meetings.
Yeah.
You know, normally I like to see lots of trades, lots of free agent signings. It has been quiet. It's like everybody's on Ambien right now.
Okay, so what do you make of that?
Yeah, I think it's simple. Number one, the deals that have already been done were huge deals setting the market. The Blue Jays deal of $210 million with Dylan Cease.
Yeah.
The $50+ million deal the Mets did with Devin Williams. So it set the bar pretty high for all the free agents. So that's part of it. Number two, there's been more trade talks within the GMs. I had 3 or 4 GMs tell me yesterday they never remember this much trade talk between clubs. A lot of trade talks, a lot of need for need kind of deals, not prospects for players, but more need for need kind of deals. Then you've got the Kyle Schwarber situation, which is kind of blocking a lot of the free agents because when Schwarber makes his decision, the teams that don't get him, they're going to pivot to wherever direction they're going, whether that be Pete Alonso or Cody Bellinger or Alex Bregman. There's just a lot of pivoting after that. So a lot of the GMs that want to do business are kind of waiting for Kyle Schwarber to decide what he's going to do. So that's part of the block as well. And then you have the competition. Yeah. I mean, you mentioned Kyle Tucker. You know, there's 2 or 3 teams that are in on him. That's going to be expensive. Everybody wants Bo Bichette because he's 27 years old and can play second, third, or short, depending on your need. Everybody wants Alex Bregman's leadership. So there's a lot of competition, and, you know, agents are asking for a lot of money because the guys that have signed have already broken barriers.
So Kyle Schwarber, you just mentioned, is one of the more important dominoes right now, it would seem to you. The trade market one is interesting because it's not always this way, but the conventional thinking is, all right, you try to explore free agency, and if you're not able to shore up areas of need through just money, that's when you kind of pivot to the trade market and go, all right, what else is out there? Like for recent vintage, Jays miss out on Brandon Nimmo, and then they end up making a Dalton Varsho trade. Is this, when you're talking about, hey, these teams are talking a lot of trades and that there's never been this much trade chatter, do you get the sense that it's because of those prices that teams are looking at this, or that there's just a robust trade market full of guys that are impact players?
No, obviously a lot of it has to do with the cost. So let's use a real live example. Let's use one of the Blue Jays competitors, the Boston Red Sox. So the Red Sox have interest in Bo Bichette. They have interest in bringing back Bregman. They're going to meet with Pete Alonso tomorrow. At the same time, they understand what the agents are asking for those 3 players. So at the same time, they're in trade discussions with the Arizona Diamondbacks for Ketel Marte, right? Because they don't care if the guy plays third or second or first. You know, they can be flexible on where they acquire the infielder that they're going to get. So then they have the trade talks with Marte. The Arizona is looking for young, controllable starters. The Red Sox have a lot of depth in that area. So the Red Sox look at it, okay, do I want to pay X for Bichette, Y for Bregman, or trade 2 pitching prospects and get Ketel Marte, who, by the way, is only going to make 80 million over the next 5 years compared to 170 million if
Right.
we go sign one of these other free agents. So just as an example, that's kind of why.
Do you view the Blue Jays as one of the main competitors for Ketel Marte?
No, I view the Blue Jays, and again, I'm just going on hearsay.
For
This is
sure.
not coming from Mark Shapiro or Ross Atkins, but based on what I'm hearing in the industry and through agents and the lobby, they seem pretty focused on Tucker or Bichette
Yeah.
and one of those back end relievers, and whether that be Robert Suarez or whether that be Pete Fairbanks, Edwin Diaz. It seems to be that is what everyone kind of believes that Toronto is doing.
Yeah.
And a lot of teams believe they're going to accomplish what they're going after. I think the run that Toronto had this year, the team they put together, signing Cease, watching the development of the Savage, like all these things have gone well for Toronto. And it's a spot that, when you go play for the Blue Jays, you don't just have Toronto on your back, you got the whole country of Canada. So everyone having such a great experience there. Bo Bichette, as you know, loves it there. He wants to come back. It's a place that players want to go to. You saw Dylan Cease pull the trigger early because he wanted to be there. So Toronto's in a good spot right now, and I think they'll get 2 more free agents before it's all said and done.
Yeah, it's interesting though because there has been some murmuring of them being interested in Marte, and of course you're going to do your due diligence as a general manager, right? Like you're going to try to find out what the acquisition costs are, and you're going to balance the things that you just mentioned, being, hey, what's the price of acquisition in a trade versus how much we would have to pay Bo Bichette? Which of the players do we like more? Go on down the line, but we are like, and this just comes with winter meetings in general, where there's going to be a spike in conversation about the stars of the game. And as you mentioned, it does look like it's going to be a little bit more slow developing. But we are now starting to see stuff like the Red Sox had a Zoom call with Bo Bichette, and he came away very impressed with it, which I'd like to see all the times where they have the Zoom call and the agent puts it out there that the guy wasn't impressed, right? Like
Right.
that. He's like, he's not going to go there. He's going to remove that team from the table. Do you like the way that the Jays are playing this with Bichette? Like, is there a chance for a team here to jump the market on him, and then all of a sudden it does become a little bit more desperate where they're fighting for a guy like Kyle Tucker?
Yeah, I think Mark Shapiro and Ross Atkins look, they know how far they're going to go for players.
Mhm.
They're very good negotiators, but they also have to respect the players' free agency. And then when I see leaks out there like Bichette meeting with the Red Sox on a Zoom call, normally when that happens to me, it's being leaked out because either A, Boston is interested in another player and they want that player to know that if you don't sign, we may sign Bichette, or the agent leaks it out because they want Toronto to up their offer.
Mhm.
So they want Toronto to know that one of your competitors are there.
Yeah.
Normally, when the leaks come out, it's for a purpose, either by the club or by the agent representing the player. And then normally the player signs at a destination that has not been mentioned. That's
Well,
normally how it works.
well, this one's particularly interesting because it's been pretty clear that the Red Sox are one of the teams that are interested in Schwarber. So if you're trying to put like the dominoes together, you're saying that he's one of the first guys that probably needs to go. And if you're trying to put urgency on a guy in terms of, hey, what the pivot plan might be, you'd be starting to talk about Bo Bichette. And conversely, from Bo's camp, what's more terrifying for the Blue Jays than to have to see Bo Bichette in a Boston Red Sox uniform for the next 8 years? Like, it's the Yankees and the Red Sox that would be the doomsday scenario for you. So it's kind of like the perfect leverage piece for both.
Yeah, and the Yankees have interest in Bo Bichette too. I don't
Yeah.
know if that's public or not yet, but look, it's normal, right? Bo Bichette's 27 years old. Bo Bichette has led the league in hits twice. When he's healthy, this guy is a hitting machine. And at 27, I think there's more power in his bat. I think that's going to come.
Mm.
So if you're sitting there and you're Brian Cashman of the Yankees or Craig Breslow of the Red Sox, just like Mark Shapiro and Ross Atkins, they want Bichette. He's young. I feel comfortable giving him a 10-year deal. I'm okay watching him develop. This is a highly focused player that cares about winning and cares about being the best that he can be. So, when you look at free agents, Kyle Tucker and Bichette are the 2 best because of age, because they'll age well. You'll get the prime years of both guys. And that's why, most teams that have the big money, those are 2 of the guys at the top of the list. Now, Schwarber is a different, unique case in that his makeup, competitiveness, mentorship, leadership, teammate qualities are off the charts. He's 80 out of 80. You don't grade somebody like this. When Kyle Schwarber walks into your clubhouse, your team's better. Your young players get better. Your veteran players get better. People listen to him, has a high baseball IQ. So you're seeing so many teams in on Schwarber right now, from the Pittsburgh Pirates to the Cincinnati Reds to the Orioles to the Mets. I mean, just go up and down this game because they know what he means to the team, not just the 50 homers he brings, but we're also talking about elite bat speed. We're talking about a DH who should age well. My comp for him in terms of aging well is David Ortiz. Quick, short to the ball, great bat speed, gets it on the barrel, and has the intelligence and the makeup to make sure he stays in the best shape he can for the remainder of his career. And that's why everybody out there wants him.
So I want to get your thoughts quickly on the Yankees because you mentioned them in the Bo Bichette pursuit. And last time you were on with me, Trent Grisham had just opted in to his contract for, what is it, like $23 million, somewhere in that range?
Yeah, 21 point something.
Yeah.
21.002 or something
But
like
you had
that,
mentioned, like, hey, they thought that he was going to go get some money elsewhere. They weren't really anticipating that he was going to take that money. And then you have ownership talking about how they don't really turn a profit, or it's not, what is it? It shouldn't be assumed that they turn a profit as the New York Yankees, basically crying poor. Yeah, they're spending a lot of money, and it's been a little murky from the outside anyways, how great a player they are in free agency right now. And I'm curious if you think this is more of a smokescreen that they're setting out there in terms of, hey, they're not really in on a lot of these major names, or, yeah, whether they actually are being a little bit more conservative than the Yankees teams that we've been accustomed to.
They're being more aggressive than I can remember in a while.
Okay, yeah.
Brian Cashman is out there working the trade phones. He doesn't have a prospect that's untouchable at this point. He's very open-minded. He's fielding a lot of calls on trade offers. I believe he'll sign Tucker or Bellinger. I think he's going to get one of the two. I think there's a chance he could trade for Marte. There's a chance he could sign a Bichette or a Bregman. I believe he will upgrade the bullpen. I believe he'll get another starting pitcher. I think the Yankees are going to be busy. I think the AL East pennant race was fascinating last year. I think the offseason is going to be just as fascinating because as much as Toronto's being aggressive, so is Toronto, so is Boston, so are the Yankees, and so are the Orioles for that matter. So outside of the Rays, the rest of this division, the checkbooks have been handed to the presidents and GMs. The pen is ready to write, and the prospects are ready to be traded. It's fun because 4 of those 5 teams are literally right now being as aggressive as anybody here at the winter meetings.
Okay, so when you mention the Yankees as one of the suitors for Kyle Tucker, you have the Blue Jays as one of them, clearly. You said 2 to 3, so the third is the Dodgers? The Mets?
Well, here's the thing. If the Phillies don't get Schwarber back, which is their number one goal, they're going to jump in on Tucker.
Okay, so, but you would view those 3 teams as the primary 3 suitors for Tucker?
As of now, the Dodgers are downplaying it. So unless there's, I think they'll probably do to Tucker what they did to Bryce Harper, which is, hey, we'll do a short term. We'll break the AAV record if you want to do 3 years or something at 50 a year or something stupid like that. I think Kyle Tucker, from what I understand, wants that long-term deal. He's going to get that long-term deal. So I kind of feel like Blue Jays, Yankees, Phillies are the 3 possibilities that I know of. And I'll never sleep on the Mets, but I just can't imagine with the needs that the Mets have in the starting rotation, I can't imagine them after committing $765 million to Soto last year, come back and commit $350 to $400 to Tucker. I just can't see that happening.
I think the reason why it felt a little bit more Tuckery was they made that Nimmo trade.
Yeah, I get that, but again, I don't think they're going to put that much more money into another outfielder when they have the issues they have in the starting pitching, which is a huge problem. They're also still trying to bring Alonso back, but if they lose him, they may pivot to Schwarber because they need power as well. And that's what the Mets really have told agents. That's what they told other GMs when teams say, okay, what are your biggest needs? They have said starting pitching and power.
So we saw a run on the relief market, right? There was a few of the back-end guys that ended up going. Then it felt like, okay, now there's at that kind of top-ish tier, there's only 3 names that are really left. Maybe you put another name in there, but for the general public, it was three guys that were at the very top, starting with Diaz, Suarez, and then Fairbanks being sort of in that consolation prize.
Yeah.
Then it slowed up. And we're in the winter meetings. When we're talking dominoes, how do you perceive the relief market in terms of the way that it's going to develop? Are they waiting on Diaz?
Yeah, I mean, Diaz is one. When Diaz signs, and Suarez will get his best offer. When
Yep.
Suarez signs and Diaz is signed, Fairbanks gets his best offer. Simple as that. Unless somebody wants to blow him out of the water. Now, Diaz wants Josh Hader's deal, right? 5 years and close to $100 million. That's what he wants. I don't think anyone's gone to 5 years. I do think he'll get 4 at 88. I do think Suarez will get 4 at 80, based on Devin Williams getting 3 at 50. So I think that can happen. But again, if you're sitting there as a GM, and Diaz is the guy you want, he's the closest thing to Mariano Rivera, Trevor Hoffman in terms of never being hurt. The arm's always fine. Shoulder, elbow's good. Yes, he's had a knee, but you look at his career, he's been pretty consistent for a long time. So he's the guy you want. I'd give the extra year and more money to him over Suarez for sure.
Yeah, he's also 2 years younger, right? Like,
Yeah.
So, and the injury was a fluke at the World Baseball Classic that ended up being,
Right.
yeah,
Knee.
not.
Yeah.
It's not an elbow, it's not an arm, it's not really a concern. I think the question when it comes to the Blue Jays with that relief market is, so they've done this thing where they go, if there's a business case for it, we'll be aggressive. And we saw that with them entering the Soto sweepstakes, the Shohei sweepstakes, with giving Vladimir Guerrero Jr. $400 million. And I think even like some of the Cease thing had to be that they didn't have certainty with their starting pitching moving forward beyond this season, right? Gossman comes off the books, Bieber comes off the books. They were kind of light there. So business and baseball seem to be more harmonious. The more difficult one to see is them getting into that upper echelon relief market based on their past behavior with relievers. And I know that you are someone that is a believer in like, hey, don't pay the huge bucks for the relief market. Be someone that can find it in other places because you can get someone to emerge. But from what you're hearing, do you actually view the Jays as a team that could end up making the business case for one of those two guys at the very top specifically?
I think I don't know if it's a business case. I think it's the baseball case overriding the business case.
Okay.
In other words, we were a half an inch away from winning a world championship for Toronto. We're that close. How can we make up that half an inch? How can we get that ball not to be lodged at the bottom of the wall? How can we get Will Smith's cleat just to be a little bit shorter so we actually win the World Series? So do I make a bad business decision to win a world championship? I think there are times when you're in that baseball business seat, you have to do that. When you're this close, you got to finish the job. That's what Dylan Cease was. And by the way, it was a very important signing for them because he's still in his 20s. He's the only pitcher in baseball the last 5 years that's had 32 starts every year, punched out 200 every year, and had a FIP under 4. Don't pay attention to the ERA, pay attention to the FIP, right? So to have that consistent young starter long-term is important. Barrios has been a bust. They're trying to trade him right now, as you know. And as you mentioned, Gossman and Bieber are free agents at the end of the year. So this was a deal they had to make business-wise and baseball-wise. I think that bringing back Bichette is extremely important. And if they can't and they get Tucker, that's just as good for me. And then figure out another back-end reliever. Can't get enough pitching as they learned against the Dodgers.
Yeah, they love guys who post. And that was their priority with Dylan Cease. So you can understand the fit there. They go out and get Cody Ponce, who they are saying is a starting pitcher. So that's 2 spots. The Barrios thing that you mentioned, them trying to actively trade him, is very interesting because looking at his contract and what the production was this last season, you go, ooh, how are you going to move off of a guy like that? How much money would the Jays have to eat? Because at some point it becomes like, well, why not just keep him if we have to be paying him anyways?
Well, I mean, they'll keep him if that's the choice. I mean, I don't think it was a good play when he was left off the roster and then didn't want to be there.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think that plays very well, and he wasn't what he was. And look, with so many teams needing starting pitching, kind of makes sense to shop him if I'm Toronto. Being willing to pay down some of the salary. You don't have to pay the whole thing, but you probably have to pay $6 or $7 million a year, but it's probably worth it depending on if you can get a young, controllable, maybe starter back, because whatever you pay down, whatever savings you have, you can reallocate to somebody else to help you more on the roster.
Yeah. So the other, I guess, question mark there though is Shane Bieber, where Atkins spoke yesterday and says he's week to. Actually, can you give me the GM breakdown of what this actually means, because it's a little murky here.
Okay.
He says, quote, as of right now, he's in a strong position, and I suppose as he starts to ramp up, we could consider some stagger potential of him, not being 100% at the very start, but we're kind of taking it week to week at a time with Shane, end quote. What does that mean?
Yeah, I mean, look, he's coming back from Tommy John surgery, as you know. He looked like himself. Everything was down a little bit, but he was pretty close to himself. But there's a lot of risk with this kind of stuff health wise. It was surprising that he opted in to the contract that he did. I think a lot of us in the industry felt, well, if he's 100%, he's going to get a multi-year deal. And so the fact that he opted in, I think we all kind of looked and said, ooh, there might be a hiccup somewhere health-wise. The important thing is to take care of him. And the other thing is you have to look at it, if you're Ross and Mark, how many innings do they believe they want him to pitch in 2026? We know we want him to pitch in the month of October, right? And we know we want him in August and September, right? But how many innings do we really want? And then does that mean maybe we start the year with him on the injured list, baby him around so we can manage the innings for the elbow or any other physical issue that he has? That's kind of what it means to me.
So, again, trying to put all this together, would you say then that the Blue Jays are definitively done adding in the free agent starting pitching market? Like a guy like Bassett, would you close the door on a potential return for a guy like him?
I'm not closing anything on the Blue Jays because you just know when you look at Mark Shapiro eyeballs, you know how close he is to that world championship. You know how bad he wants it for Toronto and Canada. He really wants it bad. So I'm not gonna limit anything that is possible with him right now. He's won Executive of the Year multiple times in Major League Baseball for a reason. Probably should have won it this year, to be honest, to take a last place team into the World Series. But that being said, I think he's obsessed with finding a way to win. So I think everything's on the table right now with him.
So we've been talking through all this going, things are going to be slow moving, things are going to be slow developing, that, it's crickets over there in terms of actual action that's going to happen with players. There's been some discussion that, people are already putting it out there. We need a deadline for some of these signings because teams are taking advantage of players and they're pushing them later into the year and forcing them to capitulate in signings in order to shift the leverage back to the baseball teams. And I'm curious if you feel as though this is just a little bit of posturing, that some of these teams are going to start to jump the market and that they're trying to work it more in silence, or if the guys like that we've been discussing here today, the major names that are in free agency, we're not going to see them sign now for another month?
Yeah. So, I do what you do, right? So I do radio, I do TV, I do writing, and baseball has become a year-round sport. So I just as soon have it be dragged out. I don't want a deadline where everybody is signed and traded by December 15th, and then it's over till spring training and we have a close period. I want the month of January to have just as many moves as the month of December, and then spring training starts in February. We don't need time off. I want the fans to continue to love baseball and love player movement, so let's drag it on as long as possible. But we do need to have moves. I think the one thing when you're sitting here at the winter meetings, it's good for the sport when the world is watching you.
Yeah.
It's good if there can be free agent signing and trades. So I'm kind of rooting very hard, JD, on the next couple of days for there to be some big moves, please.
And we would say that the most likely guy to move would be Schwarber this week?
I'm not going to predict that.
Okay.
I know how this thing works. Takes one GM to write the check. It takes one GM to close the deal. I don't think anyone can rightly predict, well, this will be the guy. I do think Schwarber would help clear the dam and allow more moves to be made quickly if that happened. But I'm not going to predict anyone's going to sign first. If I was representing a player and I have this much interest, I would take my time and try to get a bidding war and get the most from my client.
Jim, great stuff as always. I really appreciate the time, even though apparently you're not busy. You're just kind of sitting around waiting for the gist of evil. Always appreciate it, man. Thank you. Be well.
Thanks, JD. Appreciate you.
Take care, man. Former GM of 16 seasons, Executive of the Year, now insider and analyst. You can see him on SiriusXM and read him at The Athletic. So a couple things there. One, it does make me a little nervous I'm going to be honest, that the Dodgers and the Yankees are not really in a ton of rumors. When he says the guys that get rumored to the place are often the place the guy doesn't go, again, I believe in the optic shift of the Blue Jays. Of course I do. How could you not? The World Series was incredible, and you have proof of concept that you can get there. You saw what Vladimir Guerrero Jr. did in the postseason. You saw them go out and get aggressive for Dylan Cease. There's just no way that players around baseball are looking at the Blue Jays and saying, yeah, they're ways away. I'm going to go there and maybe we make the playoffs and maybe something happens. No, they're clearly one of the heavyweights in all of baseball, and at this point, them missing the postseason would be a pretty massive surprise. So buying it, buying the optic shift, buying that teams, agents, whatever, all saw the fans, the way that this country backed the Blue Jays during that run and thought, hey, that would be exciting. But it is hard to just completely ignore somebody like Jim making a point like that, who, by the way, is also very confident in the Jays, saying that he thinks that they're still going to sign two guys. But just, they're out there. They're clearly the team that agents want to use for leverage for a couple of reasons. There's a lot of fan pressure. They're very believable. They have a lot of money. And they want to get things moving, and they just saw them jump the market for a player that they wanted. So naturally, they would be in a lot of these rumors. But yeah, the Yankees being out there, the Dodgers moving quietly, and them not really be linked to players. It's just it's on the radar. The Bo thing, from, again, I'm not Mr. Insider, but I've been told he's not their priority. They want Schwarber. They want Bregman back. And when Jim's saying that piece about why these things get leaked, maybe Bo ends up there. Maybe I look like an ass. Maybe the Blue Jays look stupid because their young shortstop slash second baseman slash third baseman ends up on a divisional rival haunting them for years. But that's sort of the way that I'm looking at that one. I'm not hitting the panic button on the Bo Bichette had a great Zoom call with the Boston Red Sox, and that's really changing the way that he felt about them. Like, he knows they're good. He knows they're the Red Sox. He's faced them many times. And the idea that a Zoom call was going to materially change things for Bo Bichette, I don't really buy it. In terms of the timing of this stuff, I personally don't care at all when these things happen. Jim's right. There's certainly a selfish content piece of it for me where I look at it and go, yeah, I don't mind the Jays waiting to get business done and stretching this out and giving me, I'm in a sleepy month of January, or I've got the Olympic break happening and all of a sudden the Blue Jays are back in the news. Like, sure, give it to me. But overall, I just don't understand how a deadline would even work. How does that, if you're a player, for example, I don't know how that gives you more leverage. How does that, because that's the argument for it. There's one that's selfish from the baseball writers where they don't want to be traveling around and having to be on call 24/7. They want the peace and quiet of being able to just be with their families. Like the hockey world basically ends up happening. There's no deadline, but almost all of the action happens on July 1st and a couple of days after that. And then you see it, you get the cottage post from the NHL insiders. They're like, here's where I am. This is the lake. Don't bother me for the next 2 months. Fair. Sure, baseball guys are envious of that because, again, their phone rings and their first thinking is not in January or February that it's a friend. They're thinking this is business. This is work. Sucks to always have to be on. But this is the business we've chosen. So sorry, but I don't really have a ton of sympathy for that. With the players, though, like I've seen the case made, hey, well, if they have the deadline, it's taken away the fact that it gets too late in the year and then guys feel pressure to sign. I just don't understand the side of the players thinking that you wouldn't have the same pressure with an earlier deadline. Like, let's say they put it at January 30th. Yeah, January 30th, everybody's got to be signed. How that, like, it doesn't even make sense. So what happens? You suffer an injury in spring training, and the only guys you can get are from where? Within your system. If you sit out past the January deadline, you're done for the entire year. You're done. You can reopen it at some point. Like I just the workings of that have never made any sense to me, and I've never seen one explanation where it's come even close to giving me a reasonable explanation for as to why that would be a good idea. Lastly, yes, they signed Dylan Cease. Yes, they got Cody Ponce. Yes, they should be viewed differently in the market when it comes to trust of Shapiro and Atkins. I've gone over this with Ennis. We've done segments on it like, hey, are these guys basically ingratiated with the fan base now that they made it to a World Series? I think it's a little complicated. I think there's just some haters who want to hate for their entire lives and that they're always going to view those guys as not Alex Anthopoulos and punish them for whatever moves they made they didn't like, blah, 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 blah. That's not who I'm speaking to. Like, if you're in the camp of I've already decided either way, then this is irrelevant. Then, like who cares? You're just looking for what when you listen to shows like this? Like, either validation or something to hate. There's no real in between there. So, yes, they've done good work. And yes, they are more trusted. And as Jim points out, Mark has been a multi-time executive of the year, has a lot of respect around baseball. Blue Jays are making the business cases for things. Go on down the line. But it would be a really, really tough look for me if Tucker does end up a New York Yankee and Bo Bichette ends up signing somewhere else. And you get sold on the idea of like, hey, we're super comfortable with our depth as is, and we're bringing back most of the team that took us to the World Series and had this incredible offense. I need a more bankable offensive star in the middle of this lineup than what they currently have. I like this team a lot. I would be genuinely not jumping over the moon if they signed Kyle Tucker simply because that would suck to lose Nathan Lucas. And he would clearly be the odd man out, and they would almost be forced to trade him. I like Nathan Lucas a lot. He was one of the best stories of the season. But the idea that you're banking on too many guys that came off of just incredible years and incredible runs spooks me. I'm not there where I look at the lineup and say it's fine, and they'll get Santander back, and he's a guaranteed to be better than he was last year. Like George Springer having the season that he just had when he's up there in age. There's just too many question marks. I need there to be something a little bit more concrete, and I think a lot of people are there with me. So, yeah, they will get the praise for the Dylan Cease signing. Yeah, the Shane Bieber stuff is a little scarier right now, and I'm still going to say, even with the medical stuff, the fact that he opted in for what ends up being $13 million off your books because they had to have the payout that he couldn't have gotten that somewhere else. Like I'm still taking it as a positive. But there's still real pressure. I hope they're not viewing this as, and I don't think they are, but I hope that they're not viewing it as, hey, we can afford to sit back and wait. And if these two guys sign for big money and we don't end up with one of them, no big deal. I'm hoping that it's more in the vein of the Dylan Cease thing where they go, all right, if push comes to shove, we are still going to be able to jump a team and we are going to go into uncomfortable waters because there is not just that business case, but also, as Jim put it, the baseball case, because you are so close, because you just barely lost. Anyways, subscribe to this podcast, leave 5 stars. Reach out anytime on Twitter and Instagram at JD Bunkis. Always love getting feedback on the show. Always love hearing from people who listen. I'm going to take a quick break, and I want to talk about the rapidly declining and disastrous Philadelphia Eagles and the quarterback that is at the head of all of this. That's next. So the Eagles suck. There's just no other way to put it. The defense is awesome. Their front seven is really intimidating, and they've got playmakers in the secondary. So they're going to be in games. Even last night, they had to lose in overtime after forcing a bunch of turnovers of their own and giving up 5 turnovers from their quarterback. They still only allowed, what was it, 19 points? Yeah, because I think it was 16s heading into OT, or maybe 19. I don't know. It was either way. It was somewhere in that range. I forget the exact score of the game. 22-19. Okay, so it was 19-19 heading into OT. Right. It was 16s. Eagles kicked a field goal. They marched it right back down. Their kicker, that San Diego kicker, or sorry, LA, he is nasty work. There's the guy in Dallas, Aubrey, who gets all the headlines, but that Dicker guy is outrageous. He's one of those dudes where it feels like, okay, you just get to midfield, you got it. He's gonna boot one. Same with Brandon Aubrey. 2 guys in the league I think you feel that way about, and it's them. And what a weapon that is. So I'm watching this game, and there's just one prevailing sentiment that I just can't escape. That the quarterback does not, it's finally caught up with him. All of the talk around Jalen Hurts has permeated into his brain and his confidence. I've always gotten the sense, as just a fan, as just someone watching these games, that Hurts was someone that could turn it on when it mattered. He could make a physical play with his legs, and he would do just enough with his arm if you needed him to, in order to get away with the stuff that was the all the AJ Brown basically talk. The idea that the Eagles were winning was always a comfort for Jalen Hurts to be able to say, listen, you can hate me, you can nitpick my game, but I'm a Super Bowl champion. I've showed up in huge games. I am the face of one of the most unstoppable plays in all of football that is rapidly starting to change. And push comes to shove, I'm going to make winning plays. And if you look at our record at the end of the year and we're winning our division and we're one of the top teams in the conference, I'll take those slings and arrows. Sure, whatever. And it never really seemed to faze him because and I'm not the person that pointed this out, but I can't remember who is. But I saw recently an analyst or a podcaster, it was just a clip that was floating around where they compared a little bit of his energy to Russell Wilson. And I see that. As someone who watched a lot of Russ and who had to do quite a bit of defending, I see a little bit of that in Jalen Hurts. But last night I was watching him play, and it's the first time where he just did not look confident. And almost all of his throws, I know he throws the heater. I know that's one of the passes that he makes. But he is just out there drilling footballs at guys, ripping footballs at guys because he's terrified of throwing those interceptions. He's not throwing the ball with a ton of confidence. He looks like a guy who's lost. And now teams are loading up the box. They're firing everything at Saquon Barkley. He has the nice touchdown run last night, but overall, they're not picking up chunk plays on a lot of first downs. It's like a yard gain, a yard loss, right at the line of scrimmage. Saquon, from going from offensive player of the year and someone that was posting lines in the playoffs, like his yardage total, it was routinely 97.5 to 103, 106 range. And there was just no way that you were going to bang the under on that. He was breaking huge play after huge play after huge play. It was the identity, and Hurts needed to do the rest. He needed to clean up the rest. And they looked like a really complete football team. Now with Saquon being game planned differently and maybe not being quite the same guy, because you just never know with running backs. Every once in a while you see it with him, but even there was one play yesterday he had late where there was a cutback that if he takes it, it's maybe a touchdown that ends the game, and instead he just drives it right up the middle like a far lesser running back for 4 or 5 yards, and the Eagles end up settling for a field goal on that drive. When quarterbacks lose it like this, you see it. He's starting to make panic throws. When there's pressure, look out. He threw the one dime that A.J. Brown drops in the end zone, so he gets a little bit of reprieve because he did make a spectacular throw, maybe the best throw of the entire football game by either quarterback in a huge spot. And the guy that's crying about no possessions and who has been getting the ball a ton lately, He dropped it. But I do think that this is happening. I do think that the talk around Hurts has finally gotten loud enough because of the losing where people maybe have gotten a little bit in his head. Chris Sims eviscerated him last week. Talked about how he will just not play within their system and that he is trying to basically change Nick Sirianni's offense unilaterally. That it isn't just A.J. Brown who's frustrated with this player, that it's the entire locker room. I see things like them putting in the positivity bunny into their dressing room, and I don't look at that as, oh, that's cute, that's fun. I look at that as, what a nightmare that you have to brand something the positivity bunny, because where is the negative energy going? If you're that defense, you're pissed at the offense for not scoring any points and forcing you to have to defend short fields and be on the field all game long and have to have basically no room for error. I'm guessing that's directed at Jalen Hurts. Those receivers don't look happy. Saquon can't be happy taking this big step back. The offensive line can't be happy with it. So is that whole team basically mutiny against Jalen Hurts? Because, again, it certainly feels that way. And I will say this, too. I don't think it's a coincidence that right as this heat has been building up to this point, that all of a sudden A.J. Brown is getting a million different targets and he's surpassing the 100-yard threshold every single game. And it's weird to have this correlation where you're watching a team. A.J. Brown's amazing. He had a couple of catches in that game where you go, oh, God, sometimes you forget that maybe he's maybe not the best receiver in the NFL, but top 5, 6. Are you really going to drop him below that? If you swap them out right now in Seattle for JSN, how different would the numbers be? Like, he's unbelievable. But that Jalen Hurts force-feeding him the football to the degree that he does, it's like, okay, because you need the optics of this. You need it to go to A.J. Brown because you just want one guy to be quiet about you. You're tired of it. You're going, hey, here's the football, here's the football, here's the football. But it's also coincided with them losing and them not looking very good. And at this point, listen, again, the defense is great, but that Chargers offensive line is a joke. They got 1 million sacks in that football game. And if you're losing the Chargers in L.A., surrounded by your fans, against a defense that got caved in, I think, a week or two ago, that has been very up and down in terms of whether or not they've even looked like a playoff team or not, and your backs are against the wall and it's a everybody watching isolation game, I'm not going to write them off because they're still Philadelphia and they're so talented and all the reasons that I mentioned. Like roster-wise, if you're looking at them top to bottom outside of the quarterback, I think there's a pretty strong case to be made that they are the most talented team in the NFL. And they've won. So you can't write them off. But putting them in the same tier for me is in the NFC, what is now the Rams and the Packers at the top. I don't even know if they're in the second tier down. I don't even know if they're in that Bears-Seahawks tier of, oh, that team's pretty spooky. That team could go on a run. Niners tier. Like, don't they feel kind of one below that now? Because that's the way it feels to me. Anyway, they're not a write-off, but damn, is it ever close. Anyways, let's take a quick break and then come back. Leafs' biggest defensive changes with John Scott. That's next. The Department of NHL Player Safety has tweeted, Bobby McMahon will have a hearing today for they phrase it as high sticking, Tampa's Oliver Bjorkstrand. I would describe it more as a attempted chop of Oliver Bjorkstrand. Surprising. I actually, maybe not that surprising, but yesterday we did Leafs Talk, and there were a lot of people in the chat who didn't really view it as match penalty or any kind of a big deal. I didn't really feel that way. I think that if you swing your stick from over your head at another guy's head, that you're probably going to get in trouble for it. But he didn't really hit him. So we'll see what ends up happening this one. John Scott, 8 years in the NHL, now host of the Dropping the Gloves podcast. He joins me now. What's up, buddy? How we doing?
I'm doing great. What's up with you? Thanks for having me on, Jay.
Yeah, man, it's great to hear from you. So, yeah, you saw the Bobby McMahon play yesterday. I guess, what are your thoughts in terms of whether that's suspendable or not?
Yeah, definitely, because the intent's there, right?
Yeah.
And so he goes after him. He's trying to hit him in the head, whether he hits him or not. I don't know if he gets games, but yeah, I think it warrants a conversation for sure.
Yes.
Definitely, because it's like revenge. The intent is definitely there.
Well, so the way that I would think about this is, all right, so maybe it ends up being a fine and maybe it's not a suspension because he got the match penalty, he did miss him. But if you're the NHL, this has to be like the number one line in the sand that you have with players is like, hey, when you have your stick and it's a weapon, you can't swing it at guys' heads or we're going to have to do something about it.
Listen, I would like to say that, yeah, that makes perfect sense. I get what you're saying, but with this player's safety, it's
Yeah,
just you never know what you're
totally.
getting, day in and day out. So there's no continuity there. And with George, he might just say, well, he rode his stick up and he was bringing it down, and yeah, he was upset, but it just grazed him, and he got the penalty on the ice. So we're gonna leave it at that. So I totally get that, but just if the jerseys are gone and it's not the Toronto Maple Leafs, he should get 2 to 3 games.
Yeah.
That's where I think this falls in that range right there. It wasn't super severe,
Yeah.
but you can't be swinging your stick at someone's face. It's super dangerous.
Yeah. So I wasn't planning on doing this, but just because we're here, how frustrating was it as a player waiting for Department of Player Safety? Because as fans, I've tried to defend it at times, just from the standpoint of hockey is just this incredibly difficult game to adjudicate, and so when we're going through these things like all the precedents and trying to break down the plays through these finite lenses of, hey, and here's this other angle and here's this other thing, and going over and over and over again, I go, man, it's a fast, it's a physical game. Every once in a while I understand that it's difficult, but it really does seem so inconsistent. Like again, something like this where a guy is swinging his stick at somebody's head, and I'm a Leafs fan, like I don't want to see Bobby McMahon get suspended for a long time,
Yeah.
but that neither of us has any idea whether this is going to be a $5,000 fine or 3 game suspension.
And as a player, that was the hard part, because you see a play happen in one game on the West Coast, whether it was a knee or a hit from behind or whatever it was, a hit to
Yeah.
the head, and it just gets ignored.
Yeah.
And then you have the same play happen in New York or Toronto or Boston, wherever it may be, and then you get this whole big hoopla about it, and that guy gets 4, 5, 6 games. And the frustrating part for me, and I'm not just doing this because it affected me, was they seem to punish a certain type of player more. I
Definitely.
get repeat offenders,
Sure.
but you have to look at each individual incident kind of on its own. And then you go from there. It's like, okay, has this guy done this before? We'll add extra games. But the initial incident has to be completely apart from everything in my eyes. And I don't think they do that. They kind of pick and choose who to get based on the type of player they are, the type of team they're on, and the situation. Whereas you should just go, okay, this situation happened. Take away the jerseys, take away the points, take away the salaries. Was it a legal check? And then you go, okay, he's done it 2, 3 more times. Let's tack on 4, 5, 6 more games.
Yeah.
So, yeah, as a player, JD, it was so frustrating to kind of figure out how that whole mechanism worked. I thought it was terrible when I played.
Again, repeat offender is easier for me because you look at it and go, all right, you lose the benefit of the doubt with the intent, right? So
Mhm.
even the knee yesterday, you look at a play like that and that like sparks the whole
Yeah.
fracas. And you go like, I don't know, maybe he didn't. I think it was intentional because he has an opportunity to finish the hit up high and he doesn't, and he leaves the leg out. So I go, yeah, if I'm given benefit of the doubt, I'm taken away. But if you don't have a track record of doing that to other players, then I go like, all right, well, maybe. But there's two things that you said there that are so difficult. Is one, I believe kind of two conspiratorial things. One is that they don't like branding certain players away. So like Mikko
Yeah.
Rantanen earlier this season, he has the one against the Islanders that he doesn't get the suspension for, and then he does it the
Mhm.
next night or like 2 nights later.
And then they go, ah.
Yeah, like all right, but initially they say, oh well, he didn't have the intent and it's an accident, and I go, well, the result was the result, and it was a dangerous and it
Yeah.
was a reckless play. So what's really the difference? And I feel like as a fan, the difference is they go, we don't want anybody saying Mikko Rantanen's a dirty player. We want the optics of this guy to be he's a superstar and he's one of the most clutch players in the league. We don't even want this in the conversation. The second is that you mentioned there, which is I'm not a greatly conspiratorial person by nature. Like I just don't really buy a ton of it. I don't think that, for example, because George Peros got knocked out by a Toronto Maple Leaf, that he has got a lifelong vendetta against the Leafs. But what I do believe is what you said there, which is Toronto is in such a visible market that when things like this happen, there is an added impetus in the league to say, well, everybody saw this one and maybe they didn't see the Anaheim Ducks game that was at
Oh, for sure.
10:30 at night. So we are going to punish this player more because they are in a visible market like Toronto.
It's all about how they're perceived. It's not about the actual, safety of the players. So
Right.
they want to be perceived as, we're protecting the players. We got our thumb on the issues. But like you said, in reality, it's just they don't want to get in trouble.
Yeah.
They don't want to be in the papers. They don't want to have that kind of heat on them. So if there's a game that's getting a lot of press, oh, we gotta make a comment on this.
Right.
It's a fine, or this is why it's good, or this is why it's bad, and that's the way it shouldn't be. But that's the way it's always been. I've been in that situation a couple times with the Phil Kessel thing,
Yeah.
million years ago in Toronto, and I got called by the head of player safety, who was Brendan Shanahan at the time, and he literally said to me, JD, he said, "I want to suspend you. I'm trying to find a way to suspend you, but I can't because you really didn't do anything." And in my eyes, I'm sitting there listening to him, and I'm going, "You should not be having this conversation with me." Like, I am just as important as Phil Kessel. I'm just as important as any other player in this league. We're all NHL players. You're trying to protect us all, and you're telling me that you're trying to suspend me? It's just backwards. And I get you have to protect the star players, but there's 700 plus guys in the league. They should all get the same, amount of protection, no matter where you play, no matter what time your game is, no matter your salary. And I feel like in situations like this, Toronto does get the short end of the stick because it's like, well, we got to make sure we're not favoriting Toronto because, everybody thinks we've got their side. So I don't know. There's a lot of politics involved and a lot of people just trying to keep their job and keep out of the headlines, which shouldn't happen, but everybody's human. We have our flaws and it is what it is. But yeah, it's frustrating to see stuff like this.
Yes. So basically, what we're getting to here is that these guys are no different. They are not a sanctimonious group that is actually driven by the good of humanity and the protection of players. That they are ultimately self-serving, just like most of us, and are trying to protect their asses and roles and doing their due diligence to make sure that when things go back, that they are protected from scrutiny. So there you have it.
And they're trying to do the right thing. I was
Sure.
talking to Ryan Getzlaff earlier this year, and he's working with George, and he's like, it's hard.
No doubt.
There's 6 to 10 games a night. We're up all hours of the night. We're trying to do our best. It's hard, and there's just there's not enough guys to watch all these games, and I don't know, but they're not playing favorites. They're not going out of their way to screw a team, but it's just they're human and they're trying to do the best they can. So
Yeah.
I understand that.
I've given them reprieve for saying it's hard, but also no one forced you to do the job. you did it
I know.
willingly.
I know.
Like you signed a contract and you take money to do
Yeah.
these services. Like it isn't charity. So
Oh, yeah.
if you're gonna do it, I don't really want to hear you cry about how hard it is, to be honest. Like
It's so
I
funny.
think you just do it and be quiet about it. Okay, so I listened to one of your pods. I think it was like a couple of weeks ago when the Leafs were in it. The title was just Leafs and Oilers. And I love a title like that because everybody just knew what it meant, right? It's like
Yeah.
you didn't have to elaborate. It was just, hey, these two teams are in need of something and it's not really working out. And at that time that you recorded the podcast, the Leafs were just completely falling apart. And their main issue, I would say, was that they could not defend anybody. They were dead last or bottom 3 in basically every statistical defensive category there is. And you watch a game like last night, and they looked like a Berube hockey team. They defend the middle of the ice. They're getting pucks out. They're not taking a bunch of stupid penalties. They're forcing you to beat them 5-on-5, and they're getting timely saves. And all of a sudden you look at it and go, well, that looks familiar in a good way. That looks like the team that they were a season ago. So to you, what is the biggest difference in terms of how something like that changed?
And then for those of you who don't listen to my show, because I know all of you don't, because we get terrible numbers, but I said not to panic for Toronto. I said relax. Everybody was saying the sky is falling. Let's blow this team up. Why do we get rid of Mitch Marner? This, that, and the other thing. And I said they'll be fine. They're still trying to find their footing. There's injuries. I like the way this team is made up. The goaltenders have been playing really terrible, and they've been injured. Just give it some time. The way the Eastern Conference is right now, everybody knows it's a crapshoot. No one knows who's going to get in. Everybody's so tight. And the last 10 games, it's just coming to fruition. They're playing super solid Craig Berube hockey. This is what we saw last year. This is a team that he promised us when he signed a few years ago. I'm going to instill a defensive system. I'm going to hold everybody accountable. We're all going to play the same way. We're going to take care of our end. We're going to have each other's back. And this is the team that we've seen the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks. They've been really, really fun hockey. And I know people maybe not like it. Oh, they won 1-0 last night with an empty netter. That was a hell of a hockey game. Those are the games that you need to win to succeed in the playoffs. Oh, Austin Matthews, he's not getting. Austin Matthews was the best player on the ice last night.
Mhm.
I thought he played terrific. He was super solid defensively. He was physical. He was dynamic in the offensive end, and he didn't jeopardize himself by just trying to do things that he didn't have to do. You get the lead, you play a good solid hockey game, and then when you have to step up in certain times, you step up. So I think this team has turned a corner, and the scary thing for them, for the league, I should say, is, I don't think Austin's found his scoring touch yet.
Mhm.
I think Max Domi has a lot more to give. I think Matthew Nyes is still trying to find his game a little bit. And then you're going to get guys back from injury. Your best defenseman, Tanev, is going to come back. Then you get Brandon Carlo back. I think he's been getting heat where maybe it's not deserved. I think he's a super, super solid 3-4 defenseman. And then the next thing you know, whoa, this team could be dangerous come playoff time. So this is a good thing for them. I think this is a little growing pains. They had their issues early on, and now here we go. But JD, is this another case of, oh, we're drinking the Kool-Aid again, and this team's going to be good, and then they're going to pull the rug out from under us, and they're going to suck, and they're just going to make us all look like fools come playoff time? I don't know.
So for me, I need to see it last before I start to materially change my opinion. I've never been a burn it all down to the ground guy because I just don't think that there's a trade that benefits you when you're moving a guy like Austin Matthews or Nylander.
Oh,
and
no.
that
Yeah.
trades like that are, first of all, off-season trades. Like they're not going to happen at the deadline this year. And it's just, you're not setting this group back decade by making those kind of deals. But I have, and I still do believe this, that part of me goes, they don't really have a lot in the farm system. They don't really have a lot by the way of draft picks. They don't have a lot of supplemental depth that can come up. And maybe if these guys aren't going to work around the fringes, that a reset for this team season would actually benefit them. It's been year over year of pilfering from their asset pile. At some point, that comes home to roost. And I looked at the way that they played the first portion of the season and went, that time might be now. They're one of the older teams in the NHL. There's reasons. Like there's some of these trouble spots that we saw. I don't think that they should be just completely thrown out because they've played really awesome over the last 6-ish games with the egg against Washington in there. What I will say is if they continue to look like this, one of the cases that you made that I think is very strong is you have to – I like controlling what you can control. So it should be about your team and what you have first. But it's really difficult to ignore how dreadful the Eastern Conference looks this season and how open it looks. Like Tampa is first in the Atlantic. I got a stat for you. There's only 3 teams in the Atlantic Division that have a positive goal differential. Toronto happens to be one of them. Last night they were entering it with +2. Boston is one of the others, also +2. Tampa's the only one that was double digits in terms of their goal differential entering last night's game. That tells me, okay, if you don't have to get your act together the way that in a normal season you got to look like a contender. Florida is not going to be able to get healthy. And there's just bigger question marks there. So in terms of your odds of getting into the dance, and you do now have 3 goalies that look pretty capable, one of which in Woes specifically, when he's on his game, might be one of the best 5 in hockey. There's definitely more of a case, I think, this year, if you have a middling team that maybe isn't perfect, to say, you know what, we're actually way more in it than we would be in a different season.
Yeah, because who in the East, like Detroit, is first place in the Atlantic. Do you think Detroit's a Stanley Cup? No, not a chance in the world. Nobody thinks that. So I think this is the year. It's just like I'm a Bills guy.
Yeah.
So it's just like for me, I'm like Kansas City Chiefs are having a down year.
Yeah.
Okay. Now let's go. The Baltimore Ravens are gone too. Okay, here we go. The door is open for the Buffalo Bills to make a push this year. And the same can be said for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Florida, Tampa, Bruins, no. Wings, not a chance. So this could be the year where everybody just seems to take a year off, and if Toronto can get their act together, maybe they can take advantage of it, and hopefully the guys out west just beat each other to death, and they can find some magic in the playoffs. So I'm not anointing them, the Eastern Conference.
No,
they still have a lot of work to do by any means. Their power play is still atrocious. They got to figure out how to score more 5-on-5. This team still has a lot of issues, but based on where they are now compared to 2 weeks ago, they're in a good spot.
Yeah.
And I think, they will only continue to get better. And there's still 50 games left in the season. So there's a lot of hockey to be played, but we're doing okay considering where we were. I'm saying like I'm a Leafs fan. I hate the Leafs.
Yeah.
I grew up hating the Leafs. So I think they're doing okay from where they were. That's all I'm saying.
So here's my other reason for optimism. And I would say that this has probably shifted the hardest in terms of where I was at a couple of weeks ago is, they healthy scratch Dakota Joshua. Nick Roy ends up being hurt. They're playing Max Domi at center again. They're asking Easton Cowan at age 19 or 20, I think he's 20, to play in the top 6 for the team. And there were a couple of nights where he looked like their best player. And I thought, all right, one of the biggest needs for this group, if you're losing Mitch Marner, is to be a deeper hockey team that feels like other guys actually have significant import. And we saw essentially zero of it. Like Raw was the biggest plus you could point to of the ads. And even for him, I think it was a little underwhelming. Again, Dakota Joshua got scratched, and now Matthias Michelli is just basically not on this team. So you took the money from Marner, you sunk it into those 3 guys, and none of them were giving you a lick. Scott Lawton was hurt. He wasn't in the lineup. It looked like a drastic overpay. All of a sudden, what they do seem to have is consequential center depth, like guys who can actually play that position, who can give you a credible D-zone draw, but also chip the odd puck in. And off of those centermen, other guys are going to look a little bit better because they're in their defined roles as wingers, and they don't have to worry about as much because they're not making up for somebody who can't play the position. And I'm looking at this, and again, this is an outside observer thing, but Scott Lawton seems to bring a lot of attitude and energy to the team. Nick Waugh has brought a different attitude and energy to the team. A guy like Troy Stetcher gets signed, and he's playing desperate hockey and seems to be rubbing off on guys, slots McCabe properly. All of a sudden, you're getting a lot more out of him. This seems to be, to me anyways, one of the first times that I can remember where when you talked about accountability with the group, that this might be a little bit easier because there are more established players throughout the rest of the lineup who are contributing and taking some of that pressure off of, hey, it has to be Austin Matthews' line. Hey, it has to be John Tavares' line. If it's not one of those two, the rest of the game is just essentially a punt. And those other guys feel like basically mercenaries on the team. That there is potentially here a pathway to a more cohesive group where the accountability at large has a greater chance of actually succeeding.
Yeah, and there's nothing worse for a third and fourth line guy than knowing that you're kind of pigeonholed into this role where it's like, okay, we're going to use you on the penalty kill. We're going to use you for D-zone faceoffs. And that's about it. We're going to save the offense for, the top 2 lines, and that's it. So I think this group, and I like the jumbling of the lines and the healthy scratches. I know people are criticizing Ruby a little bit for, benching these guys, but it shows that you have the depth and your spots never safe apart from the top, 5 or 6 guys. But it's a good for this team for a Nicholas Waugh to be like, crap, I could be scratched. I need to get on my game. Dakota Joshua making 3.5. He can be healthy scratched. I think this is a good message to send. When I played for Joel Quenneville. He was a master at that, where he would bench, Patrick Kane for periods at a time. Patrick Sharp, he would sit for the whole game because he wasn't, trying or doing the things that he wanted to do. And I think Craig Berube is trying to instill that ice time is a luxury. And I control all of that. So you have to start playing better in order to get those primo chances. And I think the guys are starting to get that. And especially it starts with Austin Matthews. Everything trickles down from him. If he's going to play good, this team will be successful. If he's going to slack off, everybody keys off of him. And he's playing great hockey. I think he's kind of bought into Craig Berube's system where he doesn't have to score 60 goals in order to succeed. And that shows in the win-loss column and their goals against average. What are they giving up 5 goals in the last 10 games or something silly like that?
They've given up 10 in their last 7.
Yeah, that's a winning philosophy. That's how you win hockey games. You can't always go out and outscore people. And that's the Oilers' problem. If you want to talk about a train wreck that is the Edmonton Oilers, they don't have that philosophy. So Austin Matthews buying into this system, I think, is bigger than anybody knows, because if he's doing it, everybody will follow him, and then this team will be successful. I like how this team is made up. I know Mitch Marner's gone. I love Mitch Marner, but they have dangerous players on every line that can do a lot of different things, not just, this is their scoring line, this is their checking line, this is their penalty kill line. Like, every line can do a little bit of everything.
But again, that's what they needed to be when they said identity change or DNA change was Brad Treliving's verbiage. Mm-hmm. And that's what you expect as someone who loses an $11 million player like Mitch Marner, and you get to supplement the roster with a lot of other, or you're supposed to be able to supplement the roster with a lot of other talent, is that the expectation becomes some of the pressure is off the top guys, but also now the way they're playing. Like, there's been, and I've had to look at it and question it as well. The idea that Matthews playing in this system is now going to limit his offense, and how much of his drop-off 5-on-5 is the system versus the health, and whether or not he still has the same capabilities with the wrister that he once had that became like genuinely a like true blue game changer in the NHL in terms of the way certain guys shoot. Like that Connor Bedard exists because Austin Matthews came before him. But there also is a comfort knowing, one, that other guys can actually chip in, but two, that you can play a style where the other team isn't going to score a bunch of goals, and you don't have to be like the Oilers where the bar basically is, all right, we got to get 4 tonight. You know, like every night for Connor McDavid and for Leon Draisaitl to know that they're going to essentially have to be the ones that outscore their problems. That to me is a different fatigue level than I think Austin Matthews bears, where he no longer needs to be a guy that goes out there and provides you with a multi-goal performance every night or multi-point.
Yeah, and I think he enjoys that.
Yeah.
I don't know him personally, but the pressure in Toronto when he was scoring 60 and 69 and whatever it was, that must wear on you, where it's like, I need to score every single game in order for us to win. So it must be just a good feeling for him knowing I don't have to do that. And he's real. Like, I can't say enough about how good he's played. Like, I enjoy watching him play a game last night where he's just puck possession, getting it deep, using his body, like back checking, playing solid minutes, winning faceoffs. Like, he's a solid hockey player. And 10 years ago, if you would have told me that this is the guy who's going to be on the ice in 25, 26, I was like, you're crazy. This is a guy who was just not engaged at all on the defensive zone. And now here he is. He's one of the most well-rounded players in the league right now. Can he sustain it? I don't know, but he's playing really good hockey.
Yeah, he's been doing that now though for over a season.
Years.
Like it's been quite some time where Matthews has now kind of proven that he's a 200-foot player, that he is complete, and I think that takes a lot of pressure off of him when it comes to the goal-scoring droughts because people don't look at him as like a one-faceted player. They are able to look at him and appreciate the other parts of his game. And last night it was complete because every time his line was out there, essentially, they felt dangerous. And yeah, they didn't score 5-on-5, but how many opportunities were they around the net? How many times did they possess the puck? How many times was Max Domi kind of flipping some onto his stick? And yeah, it took what I would say is flukish. It took a flukish save for Matthews not to score 5-on-5 because one goes off the end of the stick. So yeah, I think that, again, you're not papering over all of the things that you saw this season. I think there are definitely still reasons to be concerned in terms of whether or not they can win or not. But in terms of the turn the corner, I think it's kind of safe to say at this point that this team has done something enough to buy faith in people and give confidence that they're going to be able to have a shot every night. John, again, people go listen to the podcast. It's Dropping the Gloves podcast. Get the numbers up a little bit. Thanks for making time, buddy. I appreciate it.
Well, have me on next week after they lose to San Jose, Edmonton, and Chicago, and we can talk about burning it down.
Yeah.
And we can just go full on scorched earth. But no, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. Yeah. Keep it up.
Yeah, thanks, John. Take care, man. John Scott, 8 seasons in the NHL, and of course, host of the Dropping the Gloves podcast. So yesterday, just because he mentioned the healthy scratch thing, I don't mind the scratches. If you're deserved to be out of the lineup, especially the way that it got to the point with Dakota Joshua, I was very much like, hey, take him out. Nobody's clamoring for Michelli to jump back in the lineup right now. And if he does, he's going to need to show a lot more than he did during his first stretch as a Toronto Maple Leaf. And frankly, the fit looks very difficult right now considering the style in which they're trying to play. And that was always the big question mark of him is, all right, if he's not in the top 6, what's he going to be doing for you? And he's pretty obviously lost in the bottom 6. And maybe McMahon gets slapped with a little suspension here and he gets a chance to get in there because they scratch Yarncroke or whatever, and Robertson draws back in as well. But yeah, I don't mind guys having to be desperate to play for their minutes because this is a team that should be desperate to try to win. And a lot of those guys that got brought here, Michelli and Dakota Joshua specifically, it was meant to be, hey, here's a fresh new shot to play for a different team that went out and acquired you. Michelli got scratched from January onward last year with Utah, and Dakota Joshua had a very down season. Yes, the health stuff should clearly be mentioned, but even when he came on with me, he talked about how he got to be healthy through a training camp and that this was a fresh start. So you kind of want to be able to see those guys get back to the reason why they got paid what they got paid. I'm good. Like I said, you got some depth. I'm fine with it. I just mentioned it with the goalies off the top of the show. I'm not trading any of these goaltenders, even if all 3 get healthy at the same time. I like the depth at that position. And to me, the cost benefit of moving out a goaltender to acquire I don't know what is not as likely to help you if one of those guys ends up going down and you need the other in a big spot come playoff time. Having 3 goalies for this season, you can do that. Next year, during the offseason, you can come talk to me. Same thing with the forward depth right now. It's good to have a guy like Nick Robertson who's on the outside, right? It's good now that if Carlo comes back healthy and if Tanev is able to come back healthy, that they're going to have difficult decisions to make. That a guy like Simon Benoit is going to have to play desperate hockey in order to play. He's going to have to look like playoff Benoit. Actually, last night, Benoit, who I thought was very good and didn't even get any mention really on Leafs Talk. But yesterday I tweeted, if I'm Nick Robertson, I'm spending my time off the ice drafting a trade request. And as social media is, I'm sure it ends up being the Rorschach test where people see that as the way that they want to see it. And I don't know, I'm not going to use a million characters to elaborate on it because I have the show. The reason why I think Nick Robertson needs a fresh home is that he's blocked. If you are getting healthy scratched over Easton Cowan, and Easton Cowan is getting power play time over you, what does that say about your future with the organization? If Max Domi, who has had a difficult season and is making more money than you and is on a longer term than you, is getting a longer runway on the top line, and I think Matthews strongly prefers playing with Domi over a guy like Robertson, and last night was a good example why, is Domi's going to force feed him the puck a lot. There's a bit of a fit there. And also with Max, because you are pot committed, and we have seen him in all these other roles, it doesn't really seem as though there's a spot for what Max Domi has to offer you outside of the top line. And a lot of people, including myself, were saying this coming into the season, but it bore out through the injuries down the middle when they had to use him as a center again, that it's not something you want to do. It's not something that they're going to go to if they're healthy. It's something that they're going to do in a pinch. You're also in a position where when they look at the fourth line and Berube is playing the style in which he wants to play, that Robertson, despite him, in my opinion, playing a more tenacious brand of hockey, hasn't been falling down the same way. I think he's stronger on his skates. I think that he's far more reliable 200-foot wise. He's not going to be a superstar in that regard, but like he's been credible this year. This has been a good step forward for him. Not just the offense that he was contributing early on. I mean, like as a game overall, I think Robertson has been better, and he's proving that he's an NHLer. But if I'm him and I'm just looking at the situation, it doesn't really seem as though there's a spot for me on the third or fourth lines. Bobby McMahon, Dakota Joshua, and Nick Waugh look like a line. And if they're healthy, that's what you're going to be wanting to keep. And if I'm Nick Robertson, I'm at this phase of my career and I'm at this stage, I don't want to be the extra forward. I've been the extra forward. I'm not saying that there isn't merit to it. Like, if you looked at his game over the last week and a half and he's got the one goal against Pittsburgh, it wasn't an overwhelming case that he should be in the lineup. But if you're getting scratched for Kalle Järnkrok, who, let's be honest, has not really done anything for this team over the last couple of years, but Berube probably trusts more defensively, and he's in a fourth-line role, and that's the one that is being occupied that you could get in the lineup for to play your 12 minutes a night. I just can't imagine being satisfied with that. And this is no shade. This isn't like I think the Leafs are doing something extremely wrong with Nick Robertson, or that they're mishandling Nick Robertson, or that he should have been guaranteed more of a runway in the top six. Like, this is where you're at in your career, man. You're playing and you're producing. You're going to get your looks, and I think he has gotten his looks. He has gotten his chances to get more minutes, and he has done well in those, but he has also disappeared for some of them. I just don't look at the situation for him and say, okay, well, like, where am I ultimately ending up? Because people talking about, well, eventually get him back in the top six, and what happens if Easton Cowan? If I'm him, I don't want to be a what happens if guy. And yes, if the Leafs were offered something incredible for Nick Robertson, I'm certainly not advocating that they trade him for nothing. But your hope, I think, is he has shown enough that another team would be far more interested in what he has to offer. and might be willing to part with more assets in order to acquire him than they would have during the preseason where it seemed like his market was at zero. So, yeah, if you're the Leafs, you're fine hanging on to him. Again, he's depth. If you need if somebody does get hurt, if you lose, I don't know, you lose Nylander for a bit, you lose one of those other top 6 guys, you lose Bobby McMahon to a suspension, it's nice to be able to have him get in the lineup. But if I'm him personally, I just think, what else do I got to do? I've tried to play my best hockey. You've given me looks in the top 6, and you don't love it, and you're very itchy trigger finger to remove me from those roles. I still am the extra forward. There is Matthias Michelli there, who I'm also ahead of, but, by how much, that remains a little unclear. I just don't see the path. I don't see the path outside of injury. And that's not where you want to be as a player, and it's certainly not where you want to be when you're at this stage in your career. So if I'm him, I really don't blame him whatsoever for saying, I've had my run here. You've done well by me when I've been going, and I've had multiple opportunities, but what is the future for me? And that part is just, it just doesn't seem to exist. You could disagree. You can reach out anytime at JD Bunkis, Twitter and Instagram. I do try to read the DMs. Quick break. Raptors just got thrown in a pretty heavy trade rumor, and it was by Shams Charania. I'll discuss that next. So during the show today, Shams Charania threw the Raptors in the mix on the rumor mill. Armin, what did he tweet?
It was actually part of his article on ESPN.
Okay.
Said Anthony Davis of the Dallas Mavericks is expected to be a critical trade target of several teams, including many of the East contenders. He listed the Detroit Pistons, Atlanta Hawks, and Toronto Raptors as expected suitors for Anthony Davis, according to league sources.
So, no.
So much cold water to dump on this.
No, I can't think of an idea for the Raptors that would be worse. Like, genuinely. Anthony Davis is 32 years old, and he doesn't play. And the biggest, still the biggest mark against the Raptors, even more than the shooting, even more than the questions about the offensive fit and whether or not they were going to be able to take a step this season, is can they stay healthy? Period. Brandon Ingram has not, I think he's played over 60 games once in his career, and he's only done that a couple of times. It was my biggest reservation in terms of making the trade outside of where they were as an organization and how close they were to be able to compete for an NBA championship, and the salary stuff was like, hey, man, Brandon Ingram doesn't stay healthy. He rolled his ankle the other night. I can't remember which game that was. Maybe the Knicks. Who knows? Well, people do know, but I don't remember it. But I watched Brandon Ingram roll his ankle, and I went, oh, boy, maybe we won't see him until after Christmas. Turned out that he was fine. He came back, but he's a hold-your-breath guy. Something happens to Brandon Ingram, and you're holding your breath. Anthony Davis is exactly that as well. The idea that the Raptors would try to build a team around two guys that do not stay healthy, one guy with the nickname Street Clothes, is nuts to me, and especially given that he's 32. And listen, I'm going to pick a billion holes in this discussion, but I'll start with this too, which is the Raptors beat a bunch of bad teams, and they have looked better than some people expected them to be. Right now, they're looking more like a group that's going to slot in the middle of the Eastern Conference than at the top of the Eastern Conference. They're going to have to show a lot to prove otherwise against these good teams, especially as their schedule is tough now. There's the cupcakes, there's more of them littered throughout the season, and the East is certainly flatter at the top than a lot of us thought that they would be. I'm not crowning the Detroit Pistons. I'm not crowning the New York Knicks. I'm certainly not crowning the Boston Celtics. That said, and now we got this like Franz Wagner thing with Orlando, which is spooky for them in terms of whether they can compete for a title. So no one's questioning how open the Eastern Conference is. But if you're the Raptors, that just reeks of desperation and is completely unnecessary for a team that is desperately trying to find out who they are. And throwing Anthony Davis into the mix with this team now and removing other pieces, to me, makes no sense. Here's reason number 3 as to why I hate it. So health is 1. Where the roster's at is 2. 3 is plain and simple. Anthony Davis makes $52 million a year. Last I checked. I could be wrong.
Nope, you're correct.
$54 million a year. Makes even more than that. Let's try to pull up a trade that makes sense for the Toronto Raptors.
Half the roster. Like Pirtle, Quickly, and RJ. I think equal that.
You're not
close.
Well, no,
close.
that's more. That's like Quickly and RJ alone equal that.
Okay.
Pirtle makes 19 and a half. I don't think he's trade eligible for it's one of those things where I think it's after Christmas, after January, because he got that extension. But either way, yeah, you're talking Pirtle and Barrett as the starting points, and just from a salary standpoint. So you're going to remove Jakob Pirtle. Okay, 1-for-1 for a healthy Anthony Davis, sure. We've already seen what this group looks like without RJ Barrett, and they're kind of struggling. Hold on, I have this number.
The Mavericks also don't have a general manager right now.
Yeah, but
they think that they
that's
are
the
going to
case.
get a huge haul for AD. They're not going to trade him they trade him for Luka. So no matter what we think about AD or what the whole league thinks about AD, they think that they are going to get a haul.
Sure.
And I honestly don't see how the Raptors have a haul ready for Anthony Davis.
The
or
Raptors,
why they would.
The Raptors' offense over their last 6 games is 23rd. I just looked that up. Like, at this point, until proven otherwise, because again, Brandon Ingram is the guy that unsticks things for them, and he's capable in the half court and can clearly create his own offense. But with him healthy and removing just RJ Barrett, essentially, they're 23rd in offense. And that's coincided with the defense taking a slip. And as I said on a show last week, they are still clearly a group that relies on stops and then getting out on the break and scoring in transition more so than they are a cohesive unit that has playmakers and scoring at 3 levels with multiple dangerous shooters on the outside. They have not proven to be that whatsoever yet. So if we're doing the fake Anthony Davis trade, are you really moving all in? Because that's what you would be doing, because you're not already capped out. But now you're talking about removing future first-round picks. You're talking about moving out Colin Murray-Boyle. You're talking about moving a Grady Dick, like guys that you have accumulated in the draft over the last couple of seasons for a 32-year-old who does not stay healthy and is being added to a team that has major question marks in terms of whether or not their offense is good enough when healthy to compete with the best teams in the league. Like, I don't even understand how they could be in the mix on this. Like, I get you're trying to drum up conversation, but this is a little strange considering that Shams isn't usually one of those guys. Like, I'm not going to name names, but we know that there's a few NBA insiders, much like there are in every sport, who are more likely to play the game of, well, this could be interesting, rather than just doing the raw reporting. Like, if Shams is saying this, I would think that there's some sourcing here that the Raptors, would express interest, that they are intrigued by Anthony Davis. I don't see the fit from what you'd have to give up, where you are in your timeline, and how he fits with the biggest issue with your team, which has been player health. Like, zero of it makes sense for me. So if I'm the Raptors, I guess you're taking the call because you don't know, but
they do the bargain shopping thing, right?
Yeah, but that's what I mean.
They try to give the worst deal possible and see if, the other team will bite on a player they're desperate to trade.
I'm not interested.
The only thing I could even try to give the other side of the argument is that it seems that Scotty loves to pass big to big. Like, Pirtle is by far his favorite target. And if that was AD instead of Yak, obviously that would look great. That's really the only thing I could drum up in my head. But watching AD over the years, Bunk, he doesn't fit anything this Raptors team does. He doesn't run back. He goes for offensive rebounds. You won't see him back on your end of the court, I promise you. So, like, just thinking of that, and, like, you want an anchor. The whole point of what the Raptors read right now is, like, a defensive anchor. That's why so many fans are clamoring for a backup big to do some of that rebounding and that defense. That's not AD anymore. And plus, AD, he looks more like Andre Drummond nowadays than like an agile big. He looks, I don't know why he bulked up in the offseason. I don't know what regiment that was for or like who told him to do that, but Yeah, man.
Anthony Davis is almost 33 years old, okay? Like, he turns 33 soon. He's 32 and 273 days. So his last, let's go through this. I'm just pulling up the basketball reference page so I have this actually exact. So he's played 10 games so far this season, averaging 19 and 10. Good numbers, like solid, decent efficiency, but compared to his prime, it's not there. He shoots well enough for a big, but his career from three is 29%. Let's round it up, 30% from three. He's not a devastating three-point big. Like, this isn't Karl Anthony Towns, for example, where it drastically changes the dimensions of your offense. So he's played 10 games this year. Last year he played 51. Then that 76 year, which was the throw everybody. Remember, he was in the Defensive Player of the Year fringe conversation. He made the NBA All-Star team. He was All NBA first defense. Okay, 2024, you have that. Other than that, 56 games, 40 games, 36 games, 62 games. I know there's some COVID stuff in there, but no, man. No. We have not seen prime Anthony Davis outside of that 24 season for stretches and then the COVID bubble when he got to have a bunch of time off and the Lakers basically got the perfect break in order to win an NBA championship. I can't hate this move enough. I'm for getting depreciating assets, and I certainly think that the Raptors should be still holding conversations when it comes to trades this deadline, especially if it isn't working to the ceiling that they think it's going to. But Anthony Davis is not it for me. I'm not trying to pair my young player in Scotty Barnes with a 33-year-old who's not staying on the floor.
Also, can I just say AD is not going to be here and be all happy to be part of the Toronto Raptors. I don't see that either. I just don't. I just really don't see AD coming here with the best attitude. Sure, of course, first day of school vibes at the beginning.
Sure.
It will go south pretty quick.
Well,
if I had to guess, I'm just saying, maybe AD doesn't. I'm not trying to hate on his character or anything, but I just don't think he's a fit to come to Canada.
Well,
I really don't.
The thing is, though, he still has next season on the books. He's tied in, but again, for $58 million.
Yeah, the number goes up too by year.
Just so you know, when to put it into context of what $58 million is in the NBA, because the numbers are so outrageous. Mm-hmm. That's 35% of your salary cap.
That must be a top 10-ish contract.
35% of your salary cap going to Anthony Davis, when a year ago you were one of the worst teams in the NBA, health, whatever. And this year, you got a good record, but there's not overwhelming signs of just, wow, this is just so crazy. They're middle of the pack, a little bit over the middle of the pack in offensive defensive rating over the course of the season. Their 3-point shooting numbers, they're okay, but they're still not taking a ton of attempts, and that's been slipping and they're just not there, man. They're just not an AD trade away. And frankly, I will say this too. I don't think the Pistons are an AD trade away either, and I don't think that the Atlanta Hawks are an AD trade. To me, he actually is one of the most, this goes across the board. I don't know who the teams are that should be trading for Anthony Davis. Reunite him in LA with Luka and trade Ayton and even obviously.
Yeah.
No, they can't make those contracts work. But I'm saying,
for sure,
you got to have closer to ironclad stuff that you're adding him to. You know what I'm saying? It's just not the Raptors, as fun as the start was and as encouraging as some of the signs are. They are so not in a position to be making a move like this, period. And I'm sorry, I don't even, I don't know what the counter argument is to this. I just don't think that if you're telling me, okay, you have a team, let's just say it works out that way, where you have Brandon Ingram, Scotty Barnes, and Anthony Davis, and you keep quickly. You've got those 4 guys. That sounds really nice, right? That's okay. But even with those 4 guys, are you sure you're getting out of a watered-down East?
No.
Right.
You have no depth.
It's just,
depth is so important now. We got none of it. And we haven't been knocking on the playoff door or something.
You make a move like that when exactly what you're saying, which is you're knocking on the door, you can't get over the hump, and you decide, okay, you know what? We've got this lever to pull, and he's an asset that declined, and this is one of the only destinations he wants to go to, and you're facilitating the trade, and you've got a big bad contract on the books that you can move off, but also you're pushing out the assets. Like Pirtle and RJ are important to this team right now.
Yeah.
Like, I just we've all been complaining that, the Raptor starters don't have enough minutes together. The Raptor starters don't have enough minutes together. And now you're going to try to throw that together in the fly. When's the NBA trade deadline? Is it first week of February?
Second week. Sounds
Yeah.
right. Yeah, first, second week.
So February onward, you're going to be trying to get the most out of your team and pivot them into a contender? Like, no.
The one thing I'll say about this, too, which is on the other side of the argument, is I did put in our emails recently. I'm like, are we sure the Raptors need a backup center? Because that's what everyone's been talking about, right? Watching Pirtle the other night, I love the guy, and I know that he does so many intangible things, and they keep bringing it up. Every player, coach talks about it. Are we sure we don't need a starting center, though? Like, that's the only thing about the AD thing I agree with.
Yeah, Pirtle's your starting center. And again, I don't really think that there's a way.
He's not even going to play half the season, Bunk.
Yeah, but I don't think there's a way, period, where you can make this trade that Pirtle's not in it. Like if you're getting
I'm not talking about AD. Now,
yeah,
if we were just talking about starting centers in general,
now,
whoever you get.
I think Pirtle's great, but you're not paying him that kind of money to be a backup big for you. To me, it's just more of a situational thing where sometimes he's just not closing games, and you're going to have to manage what seems like a bit of a wonky back to start this season.
Yeah, he doesn't look the same.
No, frankly, he just has not been great.
And it's worrisome. The contract he signed hasn't even set in yet. It starts next season.
Yeah.
And we got him till 29. I'm just saying, like, might have been a sticky situation.
The idea of you trying to upgrade on Pirtle is not a
realistic one. But
no,
I'm
no,
saying
no. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that's not something I'm trying to take off the table. I'm not saying, hey, don't go out and try to get a better center than Jakob Pirtle. Like, again, right now, so far this season, he's 10-8. I'm fine. I can do better. I can. Certainly, there's going to be some question marks about that extension if it continues to go this way. Useful, good passer, smart player, sets good screens, can protect at the rim. But whenever people try to do is Jakob Pirtle one of the best 7 centers in the NBA? I always go, I don't know. It's such a weird, only in this market question. But yeah, I don't view AD's obviously an upgrade over him when healthy. And now Pirtle has health questions as well. But AD's a non-touchable guy for me, period. Like, I'm not interested at this point. If this is the Raptors with the DeMar DeRozan era where they're over and over and over again right there in the Eastern Conference and they're clearly one of the best teams and the track record is established and you take a shot, fine. But the idea that you'd be taking first-round picks and young players and crushing some of your depth and removing the actually getting to see this thing play out, it feels too desperate to me. Anyway, subscribe to this podcast, leave 5 stars. We're back tomorrow. It's Myrtle and Steve Jones Jr. after this huge Raps game tonight.